So last week, was it last week? Yes, last week, early last week, on April the 30th, the Arab press was predicting a May 2019 war in the Middle East. And I want to go there right now. What is this? So this is on Memory, memory.org. I probably didn't talk about this last week because there's so many things to talk about and things to do. And people make predictions all the time, and whether they come true or not is anybody's guess. But this is, as you can see, it's dated right here, April 30th, 2019. In Arab media, increased discussion of imminent Israeli-Hezbollah war. Well, what's happening this morning? Is there an Israeli-Hezbollah war? No. No, what there is a Gaza-Israeli war. Who started it? It was Islamic Jihad. During the, I believe it was the Friday riots, 2 Islamic Jihad snipers fired bullets at Israeli soldiers, and of course, Israel fired back at the nearest enemy, which were Hamas, a Hamas post. Now, this is by H. Varukar. He says, in recent weeks, there had been an upsurge in discussion in the Arab media, particularly in the Lebanese, Syrian media, of the possibility of war this summer between Israel and Hezbollah. Now, folks, Hezbollah is a proxy of Iran, and so is Islamic Jihad. Islamic Jihad started this Gaza war. So obviously this has been directed by Iran in retaliation for the closing of the loopholes in the sanctions against Iran oil that was to take place, I believe, 2 days ago or 3 days ago. Numerous factors have contributed to the spike in the talk of war. First and foremost, the U.S. sanctions on Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah that have exacerbated the economic crises they were already experiencing. Other factors includes the April the 8th, 2019 U.S. designation of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as foreign terrorist organization. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's April 22nd announcement that from May the 3rd, 2019, the U.S. would not renew sanctions waivers for nations importing Iranian oil and Iran's threat to close off the Strait of Hormuz. Notice, 1 day after the loopholes were closed, the war on Israel begins, and it started with Islamic Jihad, proxy of Iran. Additionally, there have been increasing threats from senior U.S. officials visiting Lebanon, and most importantly by Secretary of State Pompeo, to tighten the sanctions on Hezbollah, to expand them to include other Lebanese elements close to them. It should be noted that the U.S. sanctions on Hezbollah have already seriously impacted the organization to the point where it recently requested the public's help with fundraising. Further contributing to the tension in the region was U.S. President Donald Trump's March 25th recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, enraging the Syrian regime and its allies in the region, Iran and Hezbollah, and Israel's ongoing aerial attacks against Iranian Hezbollah targets in Syria. This report will review articles in the Arab media about the possibility of an Israeli-Hezbollah war. So, the next article, Lebanese and Arab press fear that war will break out in May or June 2019. All right. You can read it yourself. I don't know if I have enough time to read all of this. So, yeah, so Lebanese and Arab press talking about a May-June war. And then the Syrian officials, journalists, the situation is likely to descend in all-out war. This is from the Syrian press, obviously. So, editor of Arab Daily, Hezbollah official told me that on May the 3rd, a military operation will be inevitable, but Hezbollah denies this. Of course, they don't want to be seen as the one behind what actually took place on, actually it was May the 3rd when they, snipers went and shot at Israeli soldiers and wounded them. A notable article discussing the possibility of an imminent war was published March the 29th, 2019 by Abd al-Bari Atwan, editor of the London-based online daily Ra'i al-Ya'am. It focused on his recent visit to Lebanon, during which he met with senior Lebanese officials, including President Michel Aoun, as well as with other politicians, senior economic officials, Lebanese journalists, and an MP from Hezbollah, Nawaf al-Musawi. Atwan wrote, al-Musawi, who was just 2 days ago, met for 5 hours with Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah and with other senior officials, whose names he did not provide, stressed to me a May 3rd would be a historic day. When I asked him for clarification, he said it was a day when the second phase of the U.S. sanctions on Iran would come into effect, preventing it from exporting a single barrel of oil. Al-Musawi added in these exact words, Iran will face two options. The first is to allow the U.S. to starve 70 million Iranians, which will bring down the regime from within, and the Iranian leadership will in no way allow this to happen. The second option is to enter into a war with the U.S. and Israel, with their allies in the region. Because of this situation, this military response is inevitable, whatever the outcome. Atwan added, al-Musawi refused to name the place where the military response would occur. Well, now we know where it occurred, where it began, don't we? So Israel has to watch its back now, with its back turned toward the north. And how it would happen, saying that it was up to the military. But he did not rule out the possibility that Hezbollah and other elements, as we see its other elements, would be at the heart of the battle. Following the article's publication, Hezbollah's media relations department hastened to publish a denial of the statements attributed to Hezbollah MP Nawaf al-Musawi in Atwan's article, noting that the meeting between the two had been personal and was intended to be off the record. It is noteworthy that in various articles published in April, Atwan repeatedly claimed that a regional war is anticipated in the near future, including particularly mentioning May the 3rd in an April 24th article. He even presented several possible scenarios for an Iranian response on that date. Closure of the Strait of Hormuz by the IRGC. And incidentally, folks, in case you were not aware, since the U.S. mainstream media refuses to report the news, Iran and Russia. Wait a minute, hold on. Iran and Russia's only aircraft carrier had war games in the Strait of Hormuz the past couple of weeks. But the news media never told you about that, did it? No. B, an official Iranian withdrawal from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action nuclear agreement, which, of course, as I've tried to explain, that the politicians across Europe and perhaps even the United States were benefiting financially from the JCPOA. And these same people who were benefiting financially from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action were working to undermine the Trump election and was the cause of all that which is going on today with the Mueller investigation. A return to enriching uranium at higher levels of concentration, which would lead to the establishment of a military nuclear arsenal. C, giving a free hand to the IRGC, to Syrian and Iraqi factions, to Hezbollah, to Hamas, and to Islamic Jihad to perpetrate terror attacks against U.S. and Israeli targets in the region and possibly also worldwide. And D, attempting to close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait at the entrance to the Red Sea and threaten global marine transportation with terror attacks perpetrated by the Houthis against U.S. and Israeli vessels. As we can see, letter C, or option C, was their starting point. Giving free hand to the IRGC, to Syria and Iraqi factions, to Hezbollah and to Hamas and to Islamic Jihad to perpetrate terror attacks against Israel and Israeli targets in the region. In this case would be against Israel. So you see, the Arab press accurately reported what's happening right now. And as far as I'm concerned, I do believe the rest of it. But, I mean, you can read the whole thing. You should. Oh, and one last thing. On the possibility that the Palestinians may participate in the campaign. Now we know, yes, this is option C right here. As a part of the discussion in the Arab press about an imminent war, some also raised the possibility that the Palestinians might participate in. On April 21st, 2019, Abd al-Bari Atwan, editor of the online daily Ra'i al-Yam, wrote in the publication that hundreds or even thousands of missiles will be fired every day on cities, airports, factories, and military bases in Israel from South Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and perhaps also from the Gaza Strip. Now, folks, this is obviously beginning with the Gaza Strip. And if the Arab forecast is right, when Gaza is finished firing their missiles, in other words, when they're run out, then they're going to be firing them from South Lebanon, Syria, Iran. I do believe, folks, that this little exercise is a bit different than what we have seen before. In his April 23rd column in the Hamas-affiliated daily Philistine, yes, Philistine, the Daily Philistine, Yusuf Rizka responds to reports about the possibility of an Israeli Hezbollah or an Israeli Hamas war this summer, wondering whether Israel would fight on both fronts simultaneously. As you can see, folks, the strategy from Israel's enemies is being telegraphed in the Arab media. If that happens, he stated, it will mean that Gaza and Lebanon share a single destiny, so they must coordinate, cooperate, and share information, he added. Israel's threats of war must not intimidate either of these two parties, for Israel will find itself facing fighters who are ready to die as martyrs, who neither fear death nor flee the battlefield. Right. So, as I just mentioned in this video this morning, yes, Israel is going to have to watch its backside now that it's got its face turned toward Gaza. The Arab press has predicted it on the exact day, May the 3rd. In an article on the anti-Hezbollah Shiite Lebanese Janubia.com, Lebanese journalist Abdallah al-Kayami assessed that the tightening of U.S. sanctions on Iran would result in action against Israel. This action, he said, may take several forms, specifically either high-quality operations carried out in the occupied territories, in the so-called occupied territories, by internal Palestinian forces such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad, a military infiltration of so-called occupied Palestine by Hezbollah, or a combination of both. In this context, it should be noted that March 25th, Nasrallah and Hamas deputy political al-Aruri met. Yes, they met to discuss the need for cooperation and for the consolidation of efforts of the axis of resistance to contend with the American-Israeli attack against it. It was also mentioned that senior members of Hamas and Islamic Jihad are inclined to praise Iran's position and its support for their two organizations, and that recently Hamas has condemned the U.S. designation of the IRGC as a foreign terrorist organization. Now, this should leave no doubt in your minds what is happening right now, and you will not get it from any other news source around the world. Especially the mainstream news, because they don't want you to know what's going on. So now the question is, as I asked last week and the week before last, the peace deal of the century. Was it a trap? I don't have the answer yet, folks, but I still am going to ask the question. Was it a trap? Let's go look at it once again. Let's see. Okay. The Rose Report, 4 sand traps in Trump's peace plan. And this was back in 2017. Number 1, rewarding Palestinian intransigence. And of course, those who have been keeping up with the so-called peace plan of the century, you know by now that the Kushner peace plan plans to reward the Palestinians for something. So, and number 1, it is absurd that the administration is willing to recognize yet another Arab Palestinian state while refusing to recognize even a small Kurdish state. Despite the Kurds having refrained from terrorism and having been crucial allies for decades, says Eugene Controversial Kantorovich, a constitutional law professor at Northwestern University and part of the Kohelet Policy Forum. Moreover, the danger of recognizing a Palestinian state, that it's the kind of move that is impossible to reverse, whereas the Palestinian side of the bargain can always be abandoned. On the other side, Kantorovich said news leaks describing a possible New Deal suggests several promising developments, such as the abandonment of the previous administration's insistence that a Palestinian state be based upon 1949 armistice lines, or that Jewish settlers be expelled as a part of such a process. That, of course, means that the Palestinians will never actually accept this deal. Of course not. But it doesn't mean they won't pocket any concession in their favor, which always becomes the floor for new negotiations. Yes. Okay, number 2, setting borders. And clearly this is in the Trump-Kushner peace plan of the century. The leaked news reports say that merely that the Palestinians would declare a state and U.S. would accept it, but it's not so simple. Well, we just found out that Jared Kushner said the Palestinians were not even going to talk about Palestinian statehood. And so that's off the table. However, under international law, prerequisites for statehood include A, effective and independent government control, which the Palestinians don't have. B, the possession of defined territory. They don't have that either. C, the capacity to freely engage in foreign relations, and they don't have that. And effective control over a permanent population, and they don't have that either. For now, if you group the above prerequisites into multiple choice tests, the answer would be E, none of the above. So the entire concept is problematic because the PA is incapable of doing any of the above without Israel's direct involvement. The idea that a Palestine could be born as an amorphous, borderless entity is unlikely, which probably means that the sections of Judea and Samaria currently under PA control would end up being a part of their so-called state. And as Kantorovich asked, if Hamas takes over, as they did in Gaza, would the U.S. unstate the state of Palestine? Of course not. Remember the 4 sand traps in Trump's peace plan. Number 3, know your customer. As President Donald Trump still markets his expertise as a businessman, as a prudent businessman is careful with whom he deals, Yoram Ettinger, a retired Israeli ambassador and a long-standing source of mine, said it best this week, and he wrote, the choice of business and social partners should be based objectively on proven track record, not subjectively on unproven hopes and speculation. Oh my, is he so right. Ettinger then ticked off a long list of allies that the Palestinians have partnered with in the last century, including the Muslim Brotherhood, Nazi Germany, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, China, Russia, and Iran. In 2017, Hitler is still glorified by the Palestinian officials and media and seller in the Palestinian Authority, Ettinger warns. Losing the culture war. As for now, if you ran a popularity contest between the Ebola epidemic and Donald Trump among leftists, Ebola would probably win. It will be illuminating to see the left's reaction to a Trump administration's peace proposal that embraces many of the left's pet positions, including Palestinian statehood, and makes Netanyahu and the right squirm. Will the left find an elegant way to embrace the idea but not the man behind it? And if Trump initiative falls apart, likely every other peace plan before it has done, he will probably find the left scorns him more than before, and the support he gained from Israelis' right will dissipate. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg, folks. So the Israelis viewed it as a trap. And, oh, look what we have here. Me. Peace Plan, Trap, and Prophecy Warning from King David on YouTube. Okay? So let's go back to YouTube, not YouTube, but to the scripture. And let's look at the words of King David and the words of Paul once again. Psalm 69. So the Israelis noticed that a possible peace plan is filled with sand traps. But if you want to know the truth, I would prefer to hear from King David himself and, quite frankly, from Paul. Verse 22. We'll use Strong's Concordance here just so we can get the definitions accurate like we did in the previous video. Let their table become a jinn. What is a jinn? A bird trap. You can go on YouTube and look up what a bird trap is. Before them, but it says in their face. So let their table become a bird trap in their face, or let their bird trap. Are they trying to set a bird trap for Israel, perhaps? Blow up in their face? And it says right here, and that which should have been for their welfare. But that's not what it says in Hebrew. Shalom. 7965. And let shalom, what does it mean? It means peace, right here, and safety, right here. Peace and safety, peace and security. Safety, safety, secure. Okay. Let's go back to it again. Let their table become a bird trap in their face, or that blows up in their face, and let peace and safety become a mokesh, or the bait. There it is, right here. A bait or lure, a snare. So the first word was a jinn. And this last word is a bait. So it appears that the peace and safety becomes bait. But wait. Is the peace plan of the century becomes the bait of the century? Is that the question to ask? Well, I would find it logical to ask that question. Let their eyes be darkened so that they see not. What does that mean? Well, if your eyes are darkened, you cannot see. And when that is made manifest to the fool, it is called delusion. What is delusion? Delusion is the act of believing a narrative when the truth proves to be opposite of that narrative. And it's plain for all to see. That is, a delusion is the worst kind of blindness one could have. The absolute worst. So, maybe it should read, let them become delusional, that they see not, and their loins continue to shake, or to totter, or to slip. Now, this has already happened to Israel. This happened to Jerusalem. In fact, Paul talked about it. I'm going to stay right here, but I'm going to go to the words of Paul, because Paul talked about it in Romans 11. But when Paul talks about this happening to the Jews of Jerusalem, I'll just show you right here in verse 9. And David said, let their table be made a snare, and a trap, and a stumbling block, and a recompense unto them. Let their eyes be darkened that they may not see, and bow down their back always. That word always does say continually, but it doesn't mean forever. Why? Because Paul then continues. He said, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Jehovah forbid. No, it'll not be forever. Who then, in the last days, at the end of Israel's tribulation, is this going to fall upon? Who is the one that is deluded now? If you will continue to read, it says, I say then, have they stumbled they should fall? Jehovah forbid, but because through their fall salvation is come to the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness, or their return back into the fold? But you see, the Christians today, along with the Muslims, do not want them to return back to their fold. They have been standing in the way of Israel returning to their fold for 2,000 years. For I speak to you Gentiles, and as much as I am the apostle of Gentiles, I magnify my office, if by any means I may provoke emulation them which are of my flesh, and may save some of them in those days. Because if the casting away of them in those days is the reconciling of the Gentiles, what then shall be the receiving of them be but life from the dead? Why? Because if the first fruit is holy, the lump is also holy. That means if the Messiah is holy, then so is Israel. If the root be holy, the root of Jesse, if that is holy, so then are all 12 branches, which includes Dan. Now, some of the branches were broken off temporarily, and you, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and with them partake of, not against them, with them. If you are against them, you are not partaking of the fatness of the root of the olive tree. You are partaking of Satan, if you are against Israel. Boast not against the branches. And this is what the Christians have done since Constantine. But if you boast, you don't bear the root, but the root bears you, which means if you boast against the branches, you are boasting against the root, which is Yehoshua HaMashiach. You will say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and you stand by faith. Be not high-minded but fear, because if Jehovah didn't spare the natural branches in the days of Jerusalem's fall, 70 CE, take heed lest he also not spare you either. All right. Now we're getting a little closer. Beware, therefore, of the goodness and severity of Jehovah. On them which fell severity, but toward you goodness, but only if you continue in his goodness. Did the Romans continue in his goodness? Even a fool knows the answer to that question. The answer is no. What then? The Romans have sealed their own fate. Western civilization has sealed their own fate. All of the Muslims have sealed their own fate. Why? Because they did not continue in goodness. Goodness is you love your neighbor as yourself. And what the Christians and the Muslims have practiced against the Jews in the past 2,000 years is not loving your neighbor as yourself. It is not. It is the opposite. Otherwise, you shall also be cut off. Oh, in other words, otherwise, let their table be made a snare and a trap and a stumbling block and a recompense unto you too. Western civilization, enemies of Israel. We have now concluded that Rome, aka Western civilization, did not continue in goodness, and therefore the words of Paul in Romans 11 and verse 9 is now, and verse 10 is now going to happen to the Gentiles. And what then? Verse 23, and they, Israel also, if they abide not still in unbelief. Well, Ezekiel 38, actually Ezekiel 39 says that Israel will no longer abide in unbelief. It's already written in the prophets. Therefore, there is no ifs, ands, or buts. Not only that, it is written in Deuteronomy 30 by Moses, the prophet himself. They shall be grafted back in because Jehovah is able to graft them in again. And if you were cut out of a wild olive tree, which is by nature wild, and you were grafted contrary to nature to a good olive tree, how much more advantageous is it going to be Israel, who are the natural branches, be grafted back into their own olive tree? Many times more. Israel has a much better chance. And then he says, for I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until. Which means it's not definite. It is not, infinite. It's finite. It doesn't last forever, as Ezekiel 38 shows. Until what? Until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Or as it is written in Matthew 25, or is it 24? 24. Until the time of the Gentiles comes to the full or comes to an end. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness happened in part to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. And when the time of the Gentiles comes to an end, so all Israel shall be saved. Not any ifs, ands, or buts. All Israel shall be saved. Learn to live with that concept. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away unholiness from Jacob. For this is my covenant, the covenant that is written in Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34. Then the covenant that's written in Hebrews 8, verses 8 through 12 is what covenant? The new covenant for Israel and for Judah unto them, when I will take away their sin. So I confronted somebody, a relative of mine, last week, I demanded of him to tell me what the new covenant is. He couldn't answer me, and I kept asking him, what is the new covenant? What is the new covenant? And he says, Henry, I am not an expert in these matters. I don't know what it is. You tell me. Well, the answer is right here in 1, 2, or I should say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. When Jehovah will take away their sins. That's the new covenant. Israel's sins are going to vanish away, all of them. And they will start afresh. How are Israel's sins going to vanish away? By the blood of the Lamb. Christians today don't believe that. They don't. They are delusional. Their eyes have become darkened. And now a trap is laid for them. A trap that they laid for Israel. As concerning the gospel, Israel might be enemies for your sakes, but concerning the election, they are the beloved elect for the patriarch's sakes, because the gifts and the calling of Jehovah cannot be changed. Bam! And you Christians say that Israel is rejected forever and that somehow the church has become the new Israel. Well, you are liars, because you all worship at the synagogue of Satan. Going back to Psalm 69, verse 23, let their eyes be darkened, that they see not, and their loins continue to shake. I believe that is written in, well, I'll just keep on reading it. Pour out your indignation upon them. This is obviously talking about the time of wrath. And let your wrathful anger, so this is the day of Jehovah's wrath, take a hold of them. Let their habitation be desolate, and none dwell in their tents. For they persecute him whom you have smitten, and they talk to the grief of those who have you have wounded. Added iniquity to their iniquity, and let them not come into your righteousness. Let them be blotted out of the book of life, and not be written with the righteous. Now, if we scroll down here to find context, folks, verse 35 in the same chapter, in the same context, for Jehovah or for Elohim will save Zion, just like Paul said in Romans 11 and verse 26. And will build the cities of Judah, Yehudah, that they may dwell there and have it in possession, and the seed also of his servants shall inherit it. And those that love his name. You despise the name of Jehovah so that you will say a different name like Jesus or God instead of Jehovah? Or do you hate Jehovah's name so that you will use Jesus in the place of Yehoshua? Yehoshua means Jehovah is salvation. That name is holy. It is never to be replaced or messed with. Do you hate his name? You don't want to be heard saying that name, do you? Because you're ashamed. You don't want to say it. You don't want to say that a Hebrew Elohim is the one you serve, do you? Those that love his name shall dwell therein. Okay? So we'll do, once again, Revelation 3. I've gone over this many times. Message to the church in Philadelphia, and to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write these things. It says, he that is holy, he that is true, he that has the key of David. He's able to open that door to the kingdom. And no man shuts, and no man opens. I know your works, and I have set before you an open door. Why? Why is he opening the door of the kingdom to this Gentile church? 2 reasons. They actually live up to their name. Brotherly love. And right here it says, for you have a little strength and have kept my word. What is his word? His word is that you love one another. This is how you know, I know that you are my disciples, that you love one another. Philadelphia means brotherly love. And keeping his words is that you love one another. What is the second one? You have not denied my name. Who denies his name? Those who worship at the synagogue of Jesus or Satan. I will make those that worship at the synagogue of Satan, who falsely claim to be spiritual Israel, yes, the Christians today, and they are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. Okay, now we go to Revelation again. Fear his name. Now, why is it that in Deuteronomy 6:13 and Deuteronomy 20 you see a version of Jehovah, because there's supposed to be a vowel sound in between the H and the W, and the W was pronounced V in those days. And why do we see it again here in Deuteronomy 10 verse 20, Jehovah? It should not be a J. There was no J sound back then. And look. Deuteronomy 10 verse 20. Let's go there. Verse 20. This is after the new tables of stone. And now Israel, what does Jehovah your Elohim require of you but to fear Jehovah your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, to love him, and to serve Jehovah your Elohim with all of your heart and with all of your soul, to keep the commandments of Jehovah and his statutes, which I command you this day for your good. Behold, heaven and heaven of heavens is Jehovah your Elohim, and the earth also and all that are therein. Only Jehovah has had a delight in your fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, even in you above all people, as it is this day. Circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart. He demanded that they circumcise the foreskin of their heart and be no more stiff-necked, but they wouldn't do it. For Jehovah your Elohim is above all that is called gods, and Jehovah is over all who call themselves Lord. A great Elohim, a mighty and terrible, which regards not persons nor takes reward. He does execute the judgment of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the stranger, in giving him food and raiment. Love you therefore the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall fear Jehovah your Elohim, and him shall you serve, and to him shall you cleave, and swear by his name. All right, so I think I missed Deuteronomy 10:20. 20 right here. Swear by his name. Now, Why did this 20? What did I must be blind. Why is it saying something different here when it says you shall fear Jehovah your Elohim, him shall you cleave and swear by his name? So I'm looking at the other ones. Okay, so let's go back and look at some more. Now, in Malachi 1 and verse 6, talks about how the priest despised his name. Do you despise his name? By replacing it with a false name? I'm waiting for this thing to load up while I'm looking. Well, I don't know what's happened to. Okay. Malachi 1 and verse 6, a son honors his father and a servant his master. If I then be a father, where is my honor? If I be a master, where is my fear? Saith Jehovah of hosts, unto you, O priests, that despise my name. And you say, wherein have we despised your name? I'm going to look at this a little bit further. Or is this thing going to... You polluted the bread of my altar. Wherein have we polluted you? In that you say the table of Jehovah is contemptible. Now, I see this among Christians. The way they put it, the God of they impugn, as they say, the God of the Old Testament. They do. All right. I want to go straight to, it's in Revelation, small and great. Revelation 19. Remember, we just read about his name. A voice came out of the throne saying, praise to our Elohim, all you servants, and them, and you that fear him, both small and great. That's not the one that I was looking for, but fearing his name and fearing him is exactly the same thing. Here it is, right here, Revelation 11, verse 18. The nations were angry, and your wrath is come. Now, this right here is written in Psalm 2. And time of the dead that they should be judged, that you should give reward unto your servants the prophets. That's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the prophets. And to the Jews, that's right, to the Jews, the saints are the Jews. The word is Kodesh. Get used to it. And them that fear your name. Fear your name. Do you have contempt for his name? Do you hate his name? You hate both Jehovah and Yehoshua? By replacing the word Yehoshua with an utterly contemptible name, that's hatred for his name. Small and great, and should destroy them which destroy the earth. Who destroyed the earth? You can read it in the last part of Daniel 9, you'll realize it was Rome, Western civilization, who was the destroyer. They worship Apollyon, called the destroyer. Fear his name, small and great. Now the Jews have so much respect for his name, they use the word Hashem, which means that name, out of respect and fear for his name. Okay? Now right here it says the nations were angry. The nations were enraged in New American Standard Bible. So let's go to Psalm. Why do the heathen rage? Psalm 2. This is the same thing. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against Jehovah and against the Messiah. Saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sits in heaven shall laugh. Jehovah shall have them in derision. And then he shall speak unto them in his wrath. Yes, at the day of wrath. And vex them with his sore displeasure. What does vex mean? Let's go look it up here, folks. Who is he going to vex? Terrify them. Well, we can see that back in cause their loins to shake. To disturb, to terrify. Cause them to tremble, to shake. Their loins are going to shake. As what was written in Psalm 69. Probably should go and keep Psalm 69 handy. Watch this. Psalm 69. And make sure that I can do a parallel here. Cause their loins to shake. Let their eyes be darkened that they see not, and let their loins continually shake. Who is this happening to? We shall see in just a minute. I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion, Jerusalem. They're going to come against him. I will declare the decree, saith Jehovah, said unto me, you are my son, this day have I begotten you. Ask of me, and I will give you the heathen, the nations, the Goy, for a possession. Ownership of, slavery, and the uttermost parts of the land. Also your possession. What is he going to do with them? You shall break them with a rod of iron, and you shall dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. The Gentiles. Be wise now, therefore, O you kings, be instructed, you judges of the earth. Serve Jehovah. What is that name again? Learn it. Love it. Your life depends upon it. With fear, with rejoicing, and with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish on the journey, when his wrath is only kindled a little bit. Blessed are all they who put their trust in him. It is extremely unwise right now to set your armaments against Israel today, to set your armaments against Jerusalem today. It is extremely unwise because the Son, as we just read here, is going to come on a moment's notice. He's going to take the kingdom of Jerusalem and become the king, and he'll be crowned by the people who live there, the Jews in Jerusalem, that many of you Gentiles call fakes and frauds and Khazarians or whatever. And you're going to come and fight against them in your darkness of heart and your darkness of the eyes, your delusions, because your narrative was proven to be false, and yet you will still believe your false narrative. So you will come against Jerusalem and be defeated and be dashed into pieces with a rod of iron. Does it begin today? I don't know. But the peace plan of the century being a bait is not lost on me. Let's see if it's true. Let's see if it happens. Pay attention. Is this another one-off, or does this turn into a Hezbollah war as the Arabs are claiming it does? We shall soon find out.